Hildred's corner, beyond Bent. Janssen! And Blackburn Rovers are 18 minutes away from a Premiership return.
As far as Stewart, just outside the penalty area, clips it central for David Dunn. David Dunn equalises! It just had to be. Dack's corner and it goes. Glance towards goal! And Rovers have taken the lead! And Charlie Mulgrew has scored his 14th of the season. It may well be the goal that sends Rovers back into the Championship.
Hello Rovers fans and welcome to another live edition of On the Other Side with me, Ryan Hildred from Rovers Chat. We have managed to squeeze in one final live video for you before the big day tomorrow. So very grateful to George for joining us this evening and also for all of you who are watching with us as usual. After the marathon of games on Tuesday, Saturday, it's easy to forget that we haven't had a game in a week. It's been a bit of a luxury. So it does seem a while since our last defeat to Stoke City last time out. So we will be hoping to bounce back against Sheffield Wednesday on Boxing Day. And I am delighted to be joined by George Smith, who is a Sheffield Wednesday fan and sports journalist. How are you doing, George?
I'm not bad, Ryan. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's a nice 45-minute break from the chaos in my house as everyone's getting excited for Santa coming. So very happy to record this video, I must say. Oh dear. Just a reminder to everyone who is watching that we are, of course, sponsored by sixyardsout.com. The Rovers Chat YouTube channel is proudly sponsored by sixyardsout.com. They've got retro football from every era with mugs, phone cases and much more. They also have plenty of Rovers goods, including apparel with the famous 94-95 season and this season's kit. Check them out using the link in the description below. Thank you, as ever, to sixyardsout.com for their very kind sponsorship of our channel this season. And for those of you that weren't able to join us last night for the big fat Rovers quiz of the year, we have raised £690 so far for the Salvation Army, which at this time of year is absolutely fantastic. So there is still time to donate. If you do wish to do that, that is rcdonate.com. Every pound that you donate will represent a raffle ticket for the chance to win a 2021 home or away shirt. And we'll be looking to close that off probably sometime after the Sheffield Wednesday game, maybe just before the Huddersfield game. So still chance to donate, still chance to get your name in the hat for that home shirt. And check out our social media channels and everything else for when that draw is going to take place. And as ever, Rovers fans, please do interact with us this evening. Anything that George or myself says, please hit us in the comments and we will pick them up through the show as we usually do. And we've got a couple of people who've joined us, George. Kevin, evening to you. And Sean Hooper, happy Christmas to you as well. So thank you for joining us, guys. We're very grateful to have you along. So, George, that's enough rambling from me. Let's kick on with the preview. So sorry to start with this as the first question. It's been a horrible year or so for Sheffield Wednesday with legal proceedings, FA hearings, and then ultimately a points deduction to start the season with. Can you just talk us through what's happened and why you found yourself in that situation?
Well, just like for most of 2020 has been a pretty bleak year, and it has been for the football club as a whole, to be honest with you. It started back in January with a terrible run of form, and obviously we got through the end of the season. Then all legal problems hit towards the start of the new season, where a 12-point deduction was imposed on the football club for breach of financial fair play for spending in previous years. The chairman, Dapon Chansiri, is pretty insistent that he'd done nothing wrong. It was to do with the sale of Hillsborough. He was adamant that he'd got proof from the EFL that the sale of the ground was above board and within reason. But unfortunately, the EFL didn't see it that way, and a 12-point deduction was imposed on the football club immediately, making what was already going to be a very tough job for Gary Monk in terms of recruitment, because he'd wanted to literally strip the squad to its bare bones and start again. And obviously, a points deduction made that challenge even harder. So overall, it's been a very, very difficult year for the football club collectively and individually for senior people within the football club. So it's just been a one big problem after another. But We've got through it almost. We're still here in the Championship. We're still in with a chance of survival at the moment, even though it's going to be very difficult. So it's just been one problem after another. And 2020 is certainly not a year in Sheffield Wednesday's history that will be looked back on with a great amount of fondness, that's for sure.
Absolutely not. And, Sheffield Wednesday were always a team there or thereabouts. And you did just miss out on promotion in that playoff final in 2015-16. And as an outsider looking in, it's felt like it's been a really slow and painful demise to where you are now. So is there, two questions really, is there fears for relegation this season? And then secondly, if you do get that relegation, the longer term security of the club with all of that hanging over you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And without a doubt, there is a great sense that this football club is in great danger of going into League One for the 2021-22 season at the moment. I don't think there's many supporters that are overly optimistic that we can retain our Championship status, even though there is a long, long way to go and things can change very quickly in the Championship, as we know only too well. But it's just been like you said, it's been a very, very quick decline the way the football club's gone. Obviously, so close to the Premier League a few years ago after so long out of the top flight of English football, and then just things have just gone wrong off the field. The recruitment's been very, very questionable. A lot of money's been spent, it has to be said, on some big name players for Championship level. A lot of money on wages, and things just for whatever reason have not worked out. The recruitment was questionable, and being totally honest, since Carlos Caballal left 3 years ago to this day, aside from a 6-month period under Steve Bruce, the football club has been going backwards, and it's been a really sad thing to see because there's not been an awful lot to get excited about aside from that period under Steve Bruce, which was quite short and sweet. So there is a real fear that this club could be in League One next season, and that a lot of people genuinely do believe that it could be a long time before we were able to bounce back to the Championship as well. So it's a real sad state of affairs at the moment, and it's not just problems on the pitch. There's off-field issues, which I'm sure we'll mention more in depth shortly, but it's just a real sad state of affairs, the way that Sheffield Wednesday as a club have declined and gone backwards in the last few years, where after so many years of hurt, we were so close to getting back into the big time.
That's right. And Kevin Bradshaw here thought the 12-point deduction was a little harsh. And yeah, ultimately that got reduced to 6 points, didn't it, George? And obviously people at the FA agreed with that assessment. So if we look at, the Championship as a league, it's so tight at the top and bottom. Asking any team to start with a minus figure is a tall order. So for Sheffield Wednesday, is it a case of just doing everything you possibly can to come 21st, reassess the situation in the summer, and then see what happens next? Is that really what it's geared towards at the moment?
Without a doubt, whether the deduction had been halved or not, that was the primary aim for this football club this season, was avoiding relegation to League One, and obviously that, of course, remains the objective. I think at the start of the season, obviously Gary Monk was the man at the helm, and it was a big summer in terms of getting the deadwood out, bringing new players in. And not only was it finding those players with the quality, it was finding the right characters that were going to be up for the fight and willing to roll their sleeves up. And being honest, we had a decent start to the season. First 2 games, we beat Cardiff away from home. We got a point at home to Watford. And it looked as though that the players were really up for the fight, and the spirit was there, the togetherness was there. A lot of people at that point thought, right, if we can quickly claw this back, we can start climbing the league and hopefully see where things can go. But obviously things quickly spiraled out of control off on the pitch, even though we have had the points reduction deduced in November. It was early November. But obviously at this moment in time, the club is 23rd in the Championship table, 4 points adrift from safety and struggling for form. So at the moment, the primary objective is to get to that 21st spot come May and hopefully avoid relegation to League One, because it would be catastrophic for the football club financially, and it would just be damaging for the supporters. It really would, being so close to the Premier League, so just like literally a few years ago, and now obviously within real danger of dropping into the 3rd tier of English football. So it's got to be the main objective, survival, and then hopefully kicking on next season, and hopefully just gradually building back towards where we want to be. But it's a massive job, both on and off the field at the football club. It really is.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And if we look at the start that you've had to the season with that deduction you've had, it's 4 wins and 6 draws, which without the deduction would put you outside the relegation zone in 20th spot, where Forest currently are. But as it is, it plunges you back into 23rd with the 6-point reduction. So firstly, how did you start the season under Gary Monk? What was it like?
Well, as I say, we the first couple of games when the fixture list came out, we thought, crikey, this is a tough start. Cardiff away in the playoffs last season, Watford at home, Premier League side last year, and we got 4 points off those, kept 2 clean sheets, and the players were playing with a spirit, they were playing with a fight and energy, and they looked pretty good. They looked up for the fight, and then we had a defeat at Bristol City where we kind of didn't deserve to lose that game, but at the same time we did, if you get my feeling, because the first half we really took the game to Bristol City and we were on top, we had chances. Then the second half they just showed their quality and that little bit better finishing technique in the final third. And then we had a couple of weird games. We got a draw with QPR, which we should have won, conceded very late on in that, and then we got a win at Birmingham, and we were within about 4 points of getting out of the minuses at that stage. And at that point, the points reduction hadn't been reduced. So we thought, hang on, we're 5 games in and we're within 4 points of safety. We've got a real chance of getting out of this quite quickly. And then came a really bleak period, a 4-game losing run. We scored just 1 goal. We got hammered 3-0 by Rotherham. We lost at Wickham, giving them their first championship win. And that was the point where the fans were thinking, right, obviously you want to give a manager time, but at the same time, Wednesday don't have time this season. Gary Monk was under increasing pressure after the defeat to Wickham. Obviously, Wickham's first ever championship win, and you just thought this is not going to end well if we carry on with Gary Monk. But the chairman at that point stuck by him, and 3 days later we got a win over Bournemouth. Really impressive victory, and one that we deserved to win. Then he got a 0-0 draw in Millwall, so you thought maybe he is starting to steady the ship again, and we are starting to look like a team that's up for the fight. And then just a few days after publicly backing him in a mammoth 3.5-hour press conference with the local media, Dejphon Chansiri opted to pull the trigger, and that was the end of the Gary Monk reign. And a lot of supporters were quite surprised after the chairman had backed him only literally a few days before. But for me, I wasn't surprised, because Dejphon Chansiri had done the same in the past with Josla Hukai. You might remember that name. And
yeah,
we had him backed. It was a big supporters meeting. The chairman backed him on the Wednesday evening. By the Friday tea time, he'd pulled the trigger. So it didn't come as a great surprise to me. But I think where Wednesday were at that moment in time, despite having beaten Bournemouth and got a draw at Millwall, I think the decision was a right one. But whether the fans have been overly pleased with what's happened since, I'm not so sure. It's been quite a split reaction on that one.
Absolutely. And so it's the new man at the helm now, Tony Pulis, who did pick up his first win in 9 games against Coventry last time out. So Rovers lost, but Wednesday won. But there's been no new manager bounce, it seems. And are you concerned by that? Is Pulis the man to keep you up?
Well, I've got to be honest, when the appointment was made, I was a little bit like, it wouldn't have been my first choice, but I think for the position that we're in and his track record of him being an established championship manager, I thought this could be the wisest move for us right now. I don't think it's a long-term thing that I'd want to see, but I thought at the time, yeah, I'll give it a go. This looks like a decent appointment for the position we're in. But unfortunately, because I was of the opinion when he came in, I thought, yeah, the football isn't going to be pretty to watch. It's not going to be great. Everybody knows Tony Pulis' style of play. But I thought he's soon going to get us climbing the table. Ultimately, that's not happened, being truthfully honest. He's only, obviously, as you mentioned there, 1 win in his first 9. It's not been the manager bounce that most managers do get when they go to a new football club. And there was flashes in an away game at Swansea, second game, where Wednesday looked a really well-organised team. They looked compact, looked organised, as you'd expect from a Tony Pulis team. But then came a run of 4 successive defeats, and it was the defeats away to Huddersfield and at home to Barnsley where fans were thinking, crikey, have we got to pull the trigger on this guy already? He's only been here less than a month, and already we're thinking, crikey, this is not going to go well. But then came a defeat at Nottingham Forest, and I'm sure you've seen about the incident with Moses Odebajo high-fiving Lewis Grabban after the goal, and I think that just increased the pressure a little bit more on Tony Pulis' shoulders, even though obviously it wasn't his fault, that particular incident. But obviously, he got that win at the weekend against Coventry, a massive, massive victory that he desperately needed to keep the fans on side just that little bit longer. And by all accounts, Wednesday did deserve it against Coventry last weekend. They showed a lot more attacking intent, had Kieran Westwood back in goal, and I think that gave them a real lift. He's just returned from an injury, and I think that will be key for Wednesday moving forward. So just now the primary objective is to build on that last weekend. But of course, as I'm sure we'll mention, it's going to be a very tough assignment at Ewood Park on Saturday.
That's right, it will be. And if we look at your scores over the last 9 games, as you've said, it's the 1 win, 3 draws, 5 defeats. But even the games you've lost, looking at those, they've all been fairly low-scoring affairs and a couple of 0-0s in there too. So a Wednesday being set up by Pulis at the moment to just be a team that doesn't concede first and foremost, what's the style of play that he's bringing?
Very much so. It's been a case of a 4-5-1 for the most of his time, but occasionally switched it to a 4-4-2, which I think he did on Saturday against Coventry. But overall, Pulis's whole objective is to not concede and try and keep the back door shut. But the biggest problem Wednesday have had this season is their inability to score goals and create chances. Because, yes, I appreciate we aren't blessed with attacking talent. We haven't got that at the moment. But at the same time, if you don't have the willingness to attack, you're not going to get any rewards at all. So Tony Pulis has kind of had a little bit of criticism for that, saying, and at day when you're in the relegation zone, you've got to win games. And Wednesday have not shown enough signs of doing that. But overall, Tony Pulis' style has been to set up with a 4-5-1 with Callum Patterson playing just off Josh Windass as a second striker sort of thing. But the primary objective Wednesday have looked to do is try and counter-attack teams and try and hit the ball over the top, which, being brutally honest, has not worked all that often under Tony Pulis so far. There was the game against Barnsley a couple of weeks ago where Barry Bannon managed to lift the ball over the top of the Barnsley defence and Josh Windass got in behind. And continuously throughout that first half, which did say Wednesday go into the break 2-1 down, it was the only source they were trying to do to get a goal and get the noses back into the game. So it's a little bit one-dimensional. They don't tend to overload bodies forward. They are a little bit frightened to attack, if that's the right word, but it's just so defensively such a defensive setup that you fear going into Saturday that the likes of Adam Armstrong, Harvey Elliott are going to cause big problems. But saying that at the same time, Wednesday, even under Gary Monk in the season, defensively haven't been that bad. They've not conceded all that many goals. They've only conceded 3 goals in a game once this season, and that was in a nightmare first half at Rotherham, where you play that game again, it probably doesn't happen. So defensively, they've not been that bad, but it's going forward where the problems lie, because Wednesday are just so short of an out-and-out number 9 and that creative linchpin to make things happen.
Yeah, and with what you've said there, George, Rovers are a side that are really comfortable with possession of the ball, and teams have hurt us this season where they've allowed us possession of the ball. So is that going to be the game plan for Wednesday, do you think? And if that is the game plan, who are going to be the danger men from a Wednesday perspective tomorrow to hurt Rovers?
Well, without a doubt, I think Barry Bannon would have to be the one, but Tony Pulis has spoken to the media this morning. Apparently he's a doubt for the weekend, so that'll be a big blow for Wednesday, but a big boost for Blackburn, because the majority of what Wednesday do does go through Barry Bannon's left foot. He's a real magician with the ball at his feet, and he is what makes that Wednesday side tick. Kadeem Harris would have been another one that Tony Pulis is sweating over the fitness of. So Wednesday are really light on options heading into this game. But you would have to say that Izzy Brown would have been the one to make things happen, but we've just not seen a lot of him since he arrived on loan from Chelsea, and that's really surprised a lot of fans with the fact that Wednesday are struggling for goals this season, and yet they've got a player that's obviously been around the block and done it at championship level. I think he created the most chances in the championship last season whilst on loan at Luton Town. So it's very surprising that he's not been given more of an opportunity to show his quality. We've not really seen a good run of him to see what he's all about, but Tony Pulis insists that's down to low fitness levels. So whether there's any truth to that, I'm not sure. But I think the Wednesday's main danger man out of the men that are likely to be fit, it's really hard to say, because we're that thin on the ground with attacking options. So Callum Patterson, if Josh Windass misses out, he's also another doubt. So we are really stretched at the moment. So it's going to be hard. But Adam Reach, he may be the one that you might want to keep quiet on his left peg. He has actually been one of the better players under Tony Pulis so far on the left-hand side. He's been whipping some really good crosses into the box, just waiting for somebody to attack them. But without Barry Bannon, Wednesday are going to be lacking a lot more attacking intent than they usually do, which is minimal as it is.
Yeah, and you've just taken me into my next question there, George, because it seems that all championship clubs at the moment are really struggling with injuries. So, where are the areas of weakness going to be for Sheffield Wednesday on Boxing Day? Where can we have some joy?
Well, Wednesday overall have been a club plagued by injuries for many seasons now. It's a really concerning factor. I'm not sure there's a club in the Championship that's had worse injury luck than we have in recent years. It's just been one after another. But starting at the back, Julian Byrne is suffering with a head injury. He's likely to miss out again. Dominic Iorfa, we've lost for the rest of the season. Arguably the standout defender at the back. He's done his Achilles. So Tom Lees will definitely be a certain star at centre half. Aidan Flint's another player without at the moment. He's facing a spill on the ceiling, so we're all really, really short at centre half. So the likely centre half pairing will be Tom Lees and Joost van Aken. But Joost van Aken's even had to play left back in recent weeks because we haven't got a recognisable left back at the football club, full stop, not one. So we're in a really bad shape defensively at the moment. But at the same time, we've not been conceding all that many goals. Going forward, as I've said, Kadeem Harris is a doubt, Barry Bannon's a doubt. And they're the two players that you do look to try and get the ball to, with Harris with his pace out wide and Bannon to make things happen through the middle. So Wednesday are a little bit stretched with bodies at the minute. Massimo Luongo is another doubt as well, and he would have kept the midfield in check. So Wednesday are really struggling with injuries, and the squad depth is not all there. It's something Tony Pulis has been very critical about since he arrived at the club, saying he's never taken on a club in such problems in terms of squad depth with players missing. So there's certainly plenty of areas in that Wednesday team that Blackburn will fancy the chance of getting at. And personally, I think it could be quite a disappointing afternoon for Wednesday at the weekend. I really do.
Well, we'll get your score prediction towards the end of the show, George. So, no, you're filling us with a bit of confidence there. And if we flip our focus onto Rovers then, George, what's been your views on Rovers this season and what you've observed from afar?
Well, I've been very impressed by what I've seen of them. Obviously, I've not seen them a lot, but in terms of highlights and things I've seen like that, you've just got to credit Tony Mowbray for the job he's done, in my opinion. I think Adam Armstrong has blossomed into arguably one of the best strikers in the Championship now. I'm a massive fan of him. I was a very, very big admirer of him when he was on loan at Barnsley a few years ago, and just with his pacing behind and his ability to score goals. And he's just, I think for me, he's blossomed into one of those strikers that you look at now thinking maybe a Premier League club will be willing to take a punt on him and give him a real run in the top flight. I think he's good enough to play there. He's a fantastic player, and his pace is devastating. His ability to just bust the net and make things happen. Harvey Elliott's another one. I've been very, very impressed by that young man. And obviously we caught wind of what he was going to be about at Liverpool, seeing the flashes of him when Jurgen Klopp had rotated. But I think he's come in for such a young age and just adapted to regular first team football with such ease. And the goal he scored against Norwich recently was just kind of an act of what that kid is going to be. He's going to be a really, really talented player in the future. So those two are your standout figures without a doubt. But obviously, you look through the rest of the team and there are players that can hurt you. And obviously, Bradley Dack is now edging closer and closer to a comeback. So that's just going to make you even stronger. So I think for Wednesday, obviously, the obvious two to look at the weekend are going to be Adam Armstrong and Harvey Elliott. But there's going to be other players within that team that are going to hurt you. So it's going to be a very difficult game for Wednesday on Boxing Day. There's no doubt about that. But I think Tony Pulis will have had to drill it into his defenders that they're going to be up for a real fight against Adam Armstrong and Elliott, because those two, for me, I think they are fast becoming quite possibly one of the most deadliest duos in the Championship now. They just seem to bounce off each other. And throughout the team as well, you've got Sam Gallagher in there as well, who can obviously cause his problems. So it's, for me, I said on our podcast quite a few months ago that Tony Mowbray, quite under the radar, has almost assembled one of the most attacking sides in the division, under the radar almost. It's been very impressive what that guy has done, I must admit.
Yeah, he's brought so much stability to our club, particularly off the pitch. And I think with what you've reflected there in your podcast, there is a bit of frustration within our fan base, actually, that we should be higher up the table with those weapons that we've got, that attacking arsenal that we've got. We should be a bit higher. So there is a little tinge of frustration, but we're hoping that Bradley Dack is just going to come in and be a real catalyst for us in an attacking sense. So we're looking forward to that. And it's a long old season. And I've always said, if you time a run properly, you can make those playoffs. And I think we're going to have to turn the year in some really good form. So, George, this part of the show, I always like to do a link between Rovers and a member of the opposition playing squad. Some weeks I've struggled, but there's no struggles this week because we've got a huge link in Jordan Rhodes, who, of course, plays for Sheffield Wednesday now. A real fan's favourite for us, a real beacon of hope in a fairly average and at times torrid time for Rovers. We did well to keep him for the time that we did, the 3.5 seasons. And when he did go, he probably went with our blessing because we were hoping he'd make that next level that he couldn't achieve with Rovers. It's been really hard, actually, to see how he is now. He's not rediscovered that scoring touch at Middlesbrough, Norwich or Sheffield Wednesday. And he's such a nice guy. So what's gone wrong for Rhodes, both before Wednesday and at Wednesday. What sort of player have you got now?
Well, I can certainly echo that statement there about him being a very nice guy. That's for sure. He's, without a doubt, one of the nicest footballers I've ever come across. I had the pleasure of interviewing him quite a few years ago, just after he joined Wednesday, and I don't think you'd find a more down to earth footballer anywhere. So for that reason, it really, really saddens me how his Wednesday career has panned out, because when he arrived, I thought, wow, these things don't happen to a club like us. So, and everybody thought he was going to be that one player that was going to get us over the line and into the Premier League. But it's just not worked out for him, unfortunately. He's played under countless managers now, and none of them, in truth, have really wanted to utilise him. Steve Bruce, unfortunately, never got the chance because he was on loan at Norwich when Steve Bruce arrived. And I genuinely think had Steve Bruce stayed and not gone to Newcastle, Steve Bruce would have been the man to get his Wednesday career off the ground and get him going. But overall, and I think a lot of fans are quite split on this, he's not been very popular with the supporters. A lot of them don't rate him. They rate him. They think he's past his best. But in fairness to the guy, he's never, ever been given the service that a Jordan Rhodes thrives off. We know Jordan Rhodes, technically, he's not the best footballer in the world. He's not going to run in behind with his pace. He's not going to win countless flick-ons and be a target man. He's your fox in the box. And Wednesday, for years now, have not been able to provide him that service. There was a few flashes where you thought, finally, he's going to get going. In December last year, when he scored a perfect hat-trick at Nottingham Forest, he was absolutely outstanding. You thought, right, this is it. This is his moment. He's going to kick on now and be the player we thought we'd signed. And within 2 games, he was dropped back to the bench again. So it can't have done his confidence any good at all. So it's just been a really, really frustrating time for the lad. And I'm really, really sorry about how it's panned out. But prior to him coming to Wednesday at Middlesbrough under Karanka, he didn't get that many opportunities to prove his worth, certainly after they got promoted. And everybody thought that he's got to be given a chance at Premier League level. His EFL record spoke for itself. And it's just slowly declined since he arrived at Hillsborough. Josla Hukai wasn't a big fan of him. He favoured Lucas João and Atinuyu. And see, João you'll know all about from his brief time at Ewood Park a few years ago. And he was the man favoured over Jordan Rhodes during that spell. Gary Monk, he looked as though he was going to give him a chance. He started the opening game of this season at Cardiff and he scored. And we thought, right, this is the rebirth of him. This is the chance he's going to get. And then within 2 games, he was back out the starting 11 again. So he's not had that consistent run of games to prove his worth. And it's just been a sorry state of affairs from the start to the end. So unfortunately, I think his best days are behind him now. And I've never wanted a player to succeed more in a Wednesday shirt, I have to be honest, because I think he's one of those players that had been admired for so long by everyone. And he always seemed to score against Wednesday. And his dad had got connections with the football club, Andy Rhodes, our former goalkeeping coach. And when he finally arrived, everybody thought, he's finally ours. At long last, we've got him. Scored within his second appearance. And everybody thought, right, here we go. It's going to happen. We've finally got a proven goal scorer. But unfortunately, he's just never got off the ground. And it's a real shame. And I think he's only scored once this season. So it doesn't look as though his Wednesday career is going to get off the ground. Tony Pulis doesn't seem to be favouring him either. I thought an experienced Championship manager obviously would have been aware of Jordan Rhodes' history, would have gone to him as the go-to man, but he favours Josh Windass over him. And I think it's because of his style of play and being able to run in behind the back line, which unfortunately Jordan Rhodes has not got the pace to do. So I can't see Jordan Rhodes' career ever getting off the ground at Wednesday. Unfortunately, his contract's up in the summer. And I think it will be a case of saying goodbye to him. But for me, it's just been one of those transfers that has just not worked out. But when you've paid £8 million, it's come as a massive, massive disappointment.
Yeah, and we know all about, big transfer fees and the pressure that can put on. Ben Brereton is only arguably finding the form that we wanted him to do now. And just on what you were saying about Rhodes as well, I think you're absolutely spot on in terms of a consistent run in the side. There is no doubt that both Huddersfield and Rovers, we built our sides around him and we gave him the service. So from a Rovers perspective, we had Craig Conway on one side, Ben Marshall on the other, Tom Kearney in the side as well. These 3 people at all points were feeding him. Then you had Rudy Gestede, who was playing the big man role really well, and they formed a lethal strike force. So I think, sadly for Rhodes, he's found out the hard way, hasn't he? Middlesbrough, Wednesday and Norwich, all 3 of those clubs aren't willing to do what Rovers did and build that side around him. And you're right, a striker now who is 30, are you going to be building a side around him? Probably not. But He's one of my favourite players of all time for Rovers. I think he was just an absolute gent and a cracking player for us. He got 83 goals in the 3.5 seasons that he had with us, which was just a nonsense. It was better than 1 in 2. And he's only got 24 goals in the 4 seasons since. It's a real shame. And you're right, he's just a lovely chap, isn't he?
He's a fantastic guy. And obviously in my job, I've been fortunate enough to speak to him because he's not a player that often speaks to the media, and I was the last person to actually speak to him in the time at Hildred before he went to Norwich. So it's quite a long gap when he didn't speak to the press. But you've just mentioned there about being able to build your team around him to get the very best out of him, and that's something we didn't do. Despite him having the perfect tools, Stephen Fletcher and Rose started to strike up a partnership about this time last year. Actually, they were obviously bouncing off each other, with Fletcher being quite a physical player and able to win the ball in the air and flick it on for him. And signs were there, but he's just failed to get off the ground. And from day one, Wednesday have not played to his strengths. They've not used him as the main man in that team to get the goals. And it's just been so damaging for his confidence. But a lot of fans, well, I say a lot, probably quite a few, still are not impressed with the fact that he refused to take a penalty in the 2017 playoff semi-final against Huddersfield Town, which at the same time, I suppose if you're under that much pressure and you don't feel comfortable, then that's fair enough. But a lot of fans have never forgiven him for that, which is a shame because I think that was quite damaging for his confidence. But it's just not worked out, as I say, and I hope when the time does come and he leaves Wednesday, which is almost certainly going to be the end of the season, that wherever he goes next, he does start to find some form again and get his career back on track for the years he's got left.
Yeah, I must say I was quite surprised he didn't take a penalty because he was always a really good penalty taker for Rovers, always really calm and just picked his spot. I think he might have missed a couple at Rovers, but always good technique. So that was a surprise, but maybe it's one of those that you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
If he strides up and then misses it, he's a villain in a different way, isn't he?
It's because he'd missed a few. That was the reason, I think. And just obviously, if you're not confident in the situation with so much riding on it, I suppose it's just a case of I don't feel comfortable doing it. I'm going to let somebody else take the responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I think there are some Rovers fans watching that contract situation in the summer. If he is out of contract and he's looking for that final move, there are people looking for that romantic reunion between Rhodes and Rovers. So we'll see. We'll see what happens and whether Jordan Rhodes does end up back at Rovers or what type of move that he gets. But I think both you and I, George, are in agreement. He deserves to have one final good move and see the Jordan Rhodes that we all know and love. So we have reached the part of the show then, George, where I'm going to put you on the spot with a score prediction. I will be doing mine as well. For the Rovers fans who are watching us on this Christmas Eve, please do let us know your score prediction and we will run through them at the end of the show as we normally do. So, George, I'm going to start with you. What's your score prediction for the game on Boxing Day?
Well, had Wednesday... Well, they may still have Barry Bannon and Kadeem Harris available, but at the moment, from what I'm hearing and what I'm reading, it looks very unlikely. So to be without those two most creative influxes in the team, it's going to be a damaging blow. And as I've mentioned, with just the lethal threat that Blackburn have got up for Wednesday is struggling for goals, I can't see anything other than a win for Tony Mowbray's side. So I'm gonna go for a 3-0 Rovers win. I can't see Wednesday scoring, so I think it's going to be a pretty comfortable afternoon for Rovers. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but we'll see what happens. But Wednesday, they do tend to struggle at Ewood Park as well. They've struggled in the past there in the last couple of years. So I think it'll be a victory for Rovers, but we shall see.
Well, we don't do things the easy way at Rovers, George. So I was my head is saying it's going to be a routine victory. We'll get the job done 2-0. But I thought that before the Rotherham game that we played, and we made very hard work of that with arguably our worst performance of the season. We've also not got the best record in the second tier on Boxing Day. So it's probably not as straightforward as you think. I'm going to suggest something maybe a little tighter. 2-1 Rovers, I'm going to say. I don't think it'll be 3-0. I think just with the way that your season is, the way that, Pulis has set you up, etc., I can just see a tighter game. And there's just those little things, our record Boxing Day and all of that. But yeah, I think we will get the win, but it just won't. I just wish it was routine, but this is Rovers we're talking about. So we've had... One prediction here from Sean Hooper: Rovers 3, Sheffield Wednesday 0, Armstrong 2, and Dak off the bench in the last 10. Now, that would be a story, Sean, if Bradley Dak is available. I'm not sure if he is. He might be. There might be a little wild card pick there for Tony Mowbray, but we will see. Still time for you to get your predictions in just before we end the stream, Rovers fans. So be quick, because I'll be ending it in a couple of minutes. So George, that is it in terms of the prediction. Thanks ever so much for joining us tonight as well on Christmas Eve. I'm really grateful for your time, especially on today.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Ryan. Thank you for having me on. Been good.
No worries. No, it's been a cracking insight. And I've said before that I love this show. I love speaking to the opposition fans and just getting the lowdown. So you've given us a great insight on Sheffield Wednesday. And I think probably knew a little bit more about your team this season, given you've been in the public eye for so long with the points deduction. But just good to see how, Pulis has landed as your manager and things like that. Just a reminder to our Rovers fans, you can still donate to the Rovers Chat fundraiser for the Salvation Army. We've raised £690 so far. But if you did want to donate, it is rcdonate.com. And every pound that you donate does represent a raffle ticket into our draw. So if you donate £50, for example, that'll be 50 raffle tickets into the entry. But we're really grateful for everyone that's donated so far. We had a great time last night doing the quiz. And, in particular at this time of year, especially with a year like we've had this year, a really worthy cause, the Salvation Army. So thank you everyone that's donated so far. So I think we've got one more prediction here from Matt, who's saying 5-0 Rovers. Probably buoyed by your pessimism there, George. But I think everyone's probably expecting a Rovers win tomorrow. But one thing I am expecting is Rovers won't make it as easy as we should do, because this is Blackburn Rovers Football Club. So I will end the stream there and say a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all Rovers fans. That's from everyone at Rovers Chat. Please stay safe. Please have a good day tomorrow. Please enjoy yourself as best you can over the next week. A very Merry Christmas to you as well, George. Are you going to the game, by the way, or are you?
Unfortunately not. I've got to work on Boxing Day, so I won't be there, but I'll be certainly keeping a close eye on proceedings, that's for sure.
Well, a very Merry Christmas to you as well, and you enjoy the game. Thanks, George, and thanks for joining us. And Rovers fans, we will end the stream, as we usually do, with our sponsor message from 6yardsout.com. The Rovers Chat YouTube channel is proudly sponsored by 6yardsout.com. They've got retro football from every era with mugs, phone cases and much more. They also have plenty of Rovers goods, including apparel with the famous 94-95 season and this season's kit. Check them out using the link in the description below.